Did it again.
Welcome to Firsts in Fiction, your first stop for learning to write fantastic fiction. I'm your host, Aaron Gansky, author of The Bargain, the Hand of Adonai series, Firsts in Fiction, and who is Harrison Sawyer.
And I'm Alton Gansky, coming to you from a very wet Fresno, where it's going to rain all night. Or maybe I should introduce myself as Alton Squeaky Chair Gansky, because I once again got the wrong chair. So if it's squeak, just pretend it's my joints. And I'm the author of Finder's Fee and about 50 other books, so been around a long time.
And I'm Molly Jo Reilly, producer of the First in Fiction podcast. I am back, and yes, I promise that I'm going to stay and not threaten to quit tonight. I am the author of the Unemployment Cookbook and the upcoming mystery location novel, NOLA.
And I do want to clarify a few points. First of all, Happy New Year to all of you. We are recording on the 3rd of January. It is a brand new year, 2017. And when my dad refers to his joints, what he's talking about are his physical joints like elbows and knees. Even though marijuana is currently legal, I just wanted to... He's got to get through the show somehow, I suppose. So, all right, moving on.
I grew up in the 60s and 70s, so...
So I do want to remind those of you who are listening to the audio only, you can watch us live every other Tuesday on 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or you can watch us at your leisure at aarongansky.com or on YouTube. You can always reach us at firstinfictionpodcast@gmail.com, or you can contact us via the contact form on aarongansky.com. And if you are listening, you probably heard me say every other Tuesday, which is a new thing for us, and so I thought I might talk about that just very briefly. We kind of did a little bit of soul searching over the last few weeks / month about where the show was headed in the year or years to come, what we wanted to do, what we wanted to accomplish, how we were going to do that. And really what it boiled down to is as much as we love bringing this podcast to you, as important as it is to us to provide good education about how to write well, it was getting to be a bit of a chore. And I don't mean to say that it's not fun, but it was another weekly commitment to our already busy schedules. And we have family, and we do have, without getting too personal, we do have some, members of our family who have been having, hospital stays and things of that nature. And so it got to be a little bit much for us trying to tune in and produce this every. And so we've decided in the future, we're going to do every other week, and that should give us enough time to focus on our families as well, and to manage day jobs and things of that nature. So that's what we'll be doing in the coming year. And we'll see what 2018 brings, but that's a ways off, a little premature. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much. Please go ahead and click that like button. It really helps us out quite a bit. And also please subscribe. And then if you've got other writer friends, please make sure you spread the word. It really helps us out quite a bit. We're still creeping ever closer to that magical 100 number of subscribers on YouTube. We would like to hit that this year if possible. So spreading the word will help us out quite a bit. So there are links at the top of the chat room where you can share this podcast with your social media circles, which helps us out quite a bit. So there is that. And shall we
that was a lot of material there.
Oh my goodness,
need to lay down for a little bit? You need to lay down for a little bit?
Yeah. I'm going to take a nap, and Pops, I'm going to throw it over to you to plug your typewriter of the week.
Ah, okay. Well, I posted a new Typewriter of the Week every week on Tuesday, which is Typewriter Tuesday. I share about a 2.5 minute video on my website, altongansky.com, and just posted today. Usually I try to get it ready on Monday, but we had issues Monday. And posted today on a 1930 Underwood portable, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I was telling Aaron and Molly Jo before we signed on that when I type on it, I usually put on a tuxedo. It's that fancy looking. So it's fun. It's only about 2.5 minutes long. You can either see it on my Facebook page, or you can go to YouTube and see it there. But or just go to altongansky.com and click over to the blog, and there it'll be.
There it will be. So thanks for that, Pops. We do have an Ask the Author question this week from Dennis Lee Bates, Jr. via Facebook, who wrote in some weeks ago. And I do apologize, Dennis, for taking so long to get to your question. But it struck me as a familiar kind of a question, one that we've answered before in the Ask the Author segment and have actually done an entire podcast on. And so I'll do some shameless self-promotion of that later on. But for now, let's go ahead and read the question, which is this. What is a suggestion to writers who hit a roadblock in their project? Basically, writer's block. Any suggestions on getting past that? Myself, I found that simply stepping away for a while and taking a break helps. We have done casts on writer's block before, and it's a good question. It's a valid question. It's one of the most common ones because it's a pretty common experience to be blocked, if you will, quote unquote, blocked. And I think it was really adorable how you asked for one suggestion, as if Pops or I could ever keep our suggestions down to one. So we might come up with a couple. But basically, I do want to plug a post I did some years ago called Turning Writer's Block into Building Blocks. And there's a link on the show notes there. But basically, if you just search Aaron Gansky Writer's Block, it'll probably pop up in your Google. Now, with that said, there are several ways to handle this, and I'll just be very brief. I think there are one way is to attack it head on. The other is to, as you say, take a break. Now, if you're going head on, there are several things that you can do. Number one, just understand that what you write is not going to be great. It's going to be first draft at best. But the process of putting words on page, the process, the kinesthetic motion of typing will often help kind of get you past that initial block. Sometimes it's just a thing where you don't want to wake up in the morning and you don't want to sit down and do it. And once you start, then it starts coming to you. It could be just kind of a mental block that way. Sometimes it's a lot more nefarious, and it's more challenging, and you find yourself writing and deleting and writing and deleting and writing and deleting, and you're kind of stuck in that pattern. And so in that case, maybe a break is going to help. I suggest that the breaks that you take be strategic, in the sense that while you're taking a break from your project, you are not taking a break from the process. So still fill your time with music, with art, reading poetry, reading a great book, a great novel, even a great nonfiction book is going to be fine. A well-written essay, even. Watching a television show, going to see a movie. Physical exercise helps quite a bit. If you don't have time to do that, I suggest making a little bit of time, just going out for a quick jog, firing off a round of push-ups or pull-ups or whatever it is that works for you in your home. That can help to kind of work out some of the kinks, get the blood flowing, get a little bit of oxygen to the brain. So those are all several different strategies for attacking writer's block. How do you do it, Pops?
Well, there's been a number of ways that I've done it, but let me address the core issue here, probably in a couple different ways. If everybody will forgive me for it. I'm not sure who said it first, but you see it batted about some, and that is fear, F-E-A-R, and they make it into this. F-E-A-R is a false expectation about reality. And sometimes what happens to us as writers is we get fearful that if we can't finish this scene, we'll never finish the book, which is just, that's a false expectation. I have found it very useful to, at times, just skip it. If I'm stuck in a scene, but I know what the next scene or 3 scenes down the road might be, I write that scene. And in the process, my subconscious is still working, what Stephen King calls the boys in the basement, still working, and then that answer will come to me, and I can go back to the part that I was stuck on. So we fear losing momentum. What we have to do is you have to get rid of the fear, know that you're going to be able to finish it at some time, but nothing says you have to do it right now. Move on to something else in the scene. Professional writers deny that there is such a thing as writer's block, and the reason is they usually have a contract and a deadline, so they can't afford any kind of belief in a writer's block. They have to produce, and so they do. So that's often what keeps them going. So just understand, some days are going to be better than others. There's days when I sit down to write and boy, the words just flow and they're brilliant. It's sheer genius. At least it seems like it when I'm writing it. And I'm cranking out page after page. And then there are some, it's like going to the dentist and having teeth pulled. It takes me 10 times longer than normal to write a single page. What I do is I just keep plugging away. I don't worry about the time. It's the process that matters of doing it. So if you change the question a little bit, though, and try to get rid of the mythology that there's this thing called writer's block, is just change it around. Have you ever heard of a mechanic's block? I'm sorry I can't get your car done today for you because, I just can't quite figure it out yet. It's the answers aren't coming to me, so I'm not sure what to do. Are a surgeon's block? Imagine halfway through a surgery and the surgeon goes, I'm not feeling it. No such thing. They do what they have to do and they get through it. So I do what you've talked about. I get up and leave. Sometimes I go nest at a Starbucks. Sometimes I just drive. Sometimes I go to a movie. And I've had answers come to me while watching a movie, nothing to do with the movie, but it's just being in front of a story. I've had answers come to me while driving my car. I've had answers come to me while I'm dining with my wife at a restaurant, and all of a sudden, boom, it just comes to me. So sometimes what we do is we tighten ourselves a little too tight and the ideas don't work. So just step away or step over it, keep going. You can always come back to it. It's entirely possible the senior writing has no value and you may not want to finish it anyway. Just keep the story going.
It's a very good point. I really like that, skipping over. The last couple of books I wrote, not the ones most recent published, but the last 2 books that I've written, the ending has come to me before I reached it, which is uncommon for me as a discovery writer. And writing the ending of the book has helped to perpetuate a consistent writing schedule and has helped me, since I know where I'm going to continually to produce day in, day out. Whereas sometimes when I don't have the end hammered out, it's a little murkier. And Pops, I like what you're saying. Is this scene necessary? Maybe it's just a scene that's not working. Skip the scene because maybe the scene is not as necessary as you think. Really good suggestions, Pops. How about you, Molly?
I talk to my characters. I talk to them and I ask and expect them to answer questions such as, why isn't this scene working? What else could you, my character, do instead? I will talk to them like they're an actual person sitting across the table from me. I'll ask them how they would handle a different character situation. What would they recommend? How would they counsel somebody else to handle this? If they insist on remaining quiet for a bit, I will walk away and do some of what Aaron suggests, which is keep it going with music or something else. And of course, we know, because I've said it before, that I oftentimes will have a small glass of wine and yell at the computer, walk away for 20 minutes, just walk around the house. And when I come back, then they seem to be a little more responsive to that. I don't know if that's the yelling or the liquor or both, but sure, that's what works for me.
It's when you shake your fist in a drunken rage. You better work it out.
Yeah. But that's exactly what it is.
So lots of different ways to handle that. Dennis, I hope that's helpful to you. And hopefully at this point, you're not blocked anymore, since it's been a few weeks since you asked. So maybe the questions or the answers are just coming a little bit too late. But we are talking today about, since it's the new year, one of the trendy things to do, one of those hot pop culture things to do, is to come up with what are called New Year's resolutions. This is a pretty new fad, I think. I don't think anybody's ever done this before, right? New Year's resolutions. It's new.
I've never heard of it. What are you talking about? Did you make that up?
Well, I'm on the bleeding edge of what's hot. So it is January now, which means a brand new year, New Year's resolutions. For many of you, one of those resolutions is to finish your novel. For some of you, it might actually be to finally land a contract and publish something. For others, it might be to finally meet a deadline, or to finish 2 novels, or to finish my next novel if you've already done one. While we may not be able to help you lose weight or maintain a workout regimen, we can help you with all your writing-related goals. So tonight, we're going to look at the habits of highly successful writers. And the first habit of a highly successful writer, that is one who not only finishes their projects, I guess we should define this. To me, a highly successful writer is not simply one who finishes their project, but is also able to find publication. Now, that is not to say that if you are not published, that you are not a quote unquote successful writer or that you are not good. What I mean to say is I want to differentiate between the writers who simply write things and shove it in a notebook and then close the notebook, and the writers who produce a work and actively send it out for publication. Those who are seeking agents, those who are seeking publication, those who are working toward the dream of publication. Anybody can write something and stick it in a notebook, but it's going to take more effort to kind of get that published. So the first habit of a highly successful writer is to commit to the dream. You want to be a writer. You want to finish your novel. You want to get published. The only way it will ever get done is for you to do it. What this means is simple. Write or edit every day, whether you want to or not. Without self-discipline, you can never achieve your goals. And I know it sounds simple. You'll never be a writer if you don't write. But again, the number of writers or wannabe writers or amateur writers or new writers who don't actively write each day is pretty staggering. So you've got to do it. Even if you're not doing it 7 days a week, at least do it 5 days a week. And that's the only way that you're going to be productive enough to be successful.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to say, I didn't put this in the show notes and I will, but just came to me. The biggest step I had in committing to the dream, as you say, Aaron, was when I removed the word aspiring from my vocabulary. I stopped being an aspiring writer and told myself I am a writer. And that just kind of triggered that determination to start getting things done faster, better, more efficiently, really committing myself to claiming that title for what I wanted. Now, as for committing to it with the time, that doesn't mean you have to write for hours each day. It's recommended that you write at least 1 or 2 hours daily, but most of us, many of us at least, can't commit to consistently setting aside one solid block of time like that. So I would recommend on the days that you can't, keep notes. Leave yourself voicemails on your phone to process later. Don't burden yourself with a specific word or page count, but do whatever it takes to get something on the page or computer that leaves you with a higher word count than you started with. That alone sets you apart from the dreamers.
Well, I'll throw my 2 bits in here with this. Tony Gwynn was a great baseball player, played for the San Diego Padres for 20 years. He died way too young, but he managed to get 3,000 hits.
Tony Gwynn, I'm sorry, Tony Gwynn died?
Yeah, a number of years ago.
Did I miss this? Oh my goodness, how did I miss that?
I'm not even a Padres fan, and I knew that.
Yeah, he had developed cancer in his jaw, probably from chewing tobacco or something. But either way, great player, and 3,000 hits. You know how he managed to do that? He was one of those players who analyzed film all the time. So if he's going to face a particular pitcher, he would analyze film of that pitcher. Today we would say video, but he started off, watching film. But more than that, he would watch himself. So if he's on a good streak and he's hitting, he would watch to find out what he's doing right. If he is missing, he's not getting the bat on the ball, he's not getting distance on the ball, whatever it might be, then he studies to see what he's doing wrong. But he studied himself over and over and over again, as well as other batters who were famous in having success. He'd watch what they would do. We writers are really the same way. We need to know what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. And if we're going to commit to the dream, we need to understand who we are. So, for example, if we lack the ability to commit to something, then we're going to have to face that and learn how to commit to a project. If we quit too soon and we have a pattern of that, then we need to recognize it and fix it. But if there are some things we're doing very well, let's say we're great with dialogue, but we might be weak on regular narrative stuff, then that's what we work on. So we need to do that as writers. You commit to the dream. When you commit to the dream, it means you're finding out what needs to be done to make the dream come true. Most of us wish for the dream, but in writing, you can't just wish for it. You have to go get it. It will not come to you. You got to grab it by the scruff of the neck and bring it to you. And so that means really sticking to it. Also, I would say this: some people let emotions dictate their actions. Emotions are blind. Therefore, don't give them your steering wheel. They don't know what they're doing. Don't let them sit behind the steering wheel and try to drive your life. They have no idea where they're going. Emotions are the seasoning of life. They are not life itself. So decide on a dream and get busy. The emotions will take care of themselves. And what that means is, even if you don't have the emotion that says, boy, I'm really looking forward to putting my fanny in the chair and cranking out words, that's great if you feel that way. If you don't feel that way, you still do it anyway. That's part of it. The emotion has nothing to do with it. What matters is your commitment to the dream. And there comes a time when you have to stop feeling and start doing. And to me, when I see writers who want to be writers, but they never do, that's been their weakness. They spend more time feeling than they are doing. And at some point, you have to stop doing that.
I like what both of you have said. Molly, it really resonates with me when you say taking the aspiring out of the vocabulary. So just referring to yourself as a writer, thinking of yourself as a writer. That was pretty instrumental when I got the same advice early on. It was that was the time where I went, oh, by thinking of myself as an aspiring writer, I've been giving myself permission to not write and to not actively pursue it.
Exactly.
And so when you take that out, well, now you're a writer. And so when you tell people, oh, I'm a writer, they're going to ask, oh, have you written anything I've read? Probably not, because most of America doesn't read. I'm joking. I kid. But that's a big deal. So this commitment is important. I mean, you don't lose weight unless you change your diet and you work out, and you don't publish a book unless you actually sit down and write the thing. No one else is going to do it for you. So having that commitment is really, really crucial. Another crucial thing, another habit of a highly successful writer is somebody who builds a support team. I cannot tell you how many quality writers I've seen never publish simply, and they give up oftentimes on the dream simply because they don't have a strong support team. So the best way to ensure success is to confide in your closest friends and family. Tell them your dreams and your goals and request their help in encouraging you and holding you accountable. There's an issue of accountability here, okay? You want people who are in your corner, who will be your cheerleaders, and they will also call you to task if you are not doing what you are supposed to be doing. Few of us really have the willpower to see a major project through to the end without a little bit of help, okay? I don't care if it takes you a year to write your novel or 2 years or 3 years. I really don't care. But you have to finish it. And that doesn't genuinely or generally happen without somebody there to help you along the way. So having friends and family encourage and assist you by helping you to make time and space to write, by agreeing not to distract you during your writing time. That little tiny bit is usually enough to help most new writers complete their projects and meet their goals. Just getting a team behind them, just getting their families and their friends to buy into it. And it's tough. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's difficult, because when you tell them, I want to be a writer, that's the equivalent of somebody saying, oh, I want to be a professional singer. I want to be a professional dancer. I want to be a professional painter. And a lot of people will scoff at that. And it's your job to say, no, I'm serious. I'm going to do this, and I would like your help. And if they love you deeply, they will support you. You just have to make it clear to them that it is an important part of you. You would like them to help develop. And also make sure that you're not ignoring them. Don't write for 17 hours a day and never see them. That would be bad. Whatever it takes, find out what they really love, what they're really interested in, and then agree that, hey, at from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. every day, I'm going to write, and you're going to practice your singing or your guitar or your painting or whatever else it is that you love, or you're just going to watch a TV show if that's your thing. But I'm going to make time for you to do what you love if you help me make the time to do what I love. So building a support team, very, very important aspect of highly successful writers.
You know, Aaron, I'm just reminded it was like a year ago after the podcast and your wife was there, and you and I were talking about, and you're telling me about this new game on the phone and how I had to download this new game, and Naomi's in the background just practically yelling at you, please don't give her any more distractions.
That's true. I can handle phone gaming. I can do that. I can put in in a couple minutes here and there, but
I'm so addicted to phone games, and Naomi knew what she was saying when she told you not to get me hooked on another one.
True.
It's important I want to throw this out there. It's important to understand accountability is not the same as pressure. You want to make sure that your people know the difference, and feel free to tell them when you feel pressured instead of encouraged. You don't want somebody who's breathing down your neck saying, hey, I thought you were going to write 2,000 words today. I thought you were going to do this. I thought you were going to do that. As opposed to, how can I help you get some writing done today? Or, good job, you did that writing. Accountability is not pressure. Make sure they understand the difference, because for me, at least, that frees me up to be more creative instead of feeling burdened with the job of having to be a writer.
Well, this is probably more proof that I'm a bit of an outlier in some of this. And it really has to do with your personality. I'm not the kind of person that I want to talk to other folks about my writing, especially if they're not writers, because they just can't understand the mental illness. I mean, the art of writing. But that's me. I'm pretty much a loner anyway. So, of course, my wife knows. She's always the first reader of anything that I do. And then there have been a couple of people I've used as beta readers after I've done the work. But I really believe that an artist is motivated from within, not from without. Now, sure, every once in a while we need somebody to step in and maybe put a boot to our fanny. Stephen King's whole career is based on the fact that his wife would not let him throw Carrie away, the first book. He gave up on it because he didn't understand teenage girls or something like that. And he just said, I can't make it realistic. And he threw it away. And his wife said, no, we need the money. You finish this. And I'll let you in on all the little lodge secrets about being a young girl. And that's how Carrie came to be. Norman Vincent Peale threw away The Power of Positive Thinking and forbid his wife to take it out of the trash can. So she picked up the trash can and took it to the publisher and asked him to take it out of the trash can. And it sold. And it became one of the best-selling books of all time. So sometimes we need an intervention like that to keep us going. But for work styles, I'm just not one of those. I know other writers, and I know they understand the process. So occasionally I can bat ideas around with them. But for the most part, I work in isolation. So I'm not suggesting that you have to do it that way, but do make sure the advice we're trying to give you fits your personality and your work style.
I would agree with that, Pops. That's a good point. You are, I would say, might be the exception to the rule of having enough willpower, self-determination to see a project through to the end. There are other people out there who can do it as well, but I guess my personal experience has been colored a little bit by some of the writers that I've talked to, or I guess I should say would-be writers that I've talked to, who are busy with day jobs. And then they come home and they don't have a supportive family, and the family immediately, asks them to prioritize things that maybe are not priorities for them, et cetera. I'm trying to say this very politically. But really what it boils down to is I've got a wife who, when I come home and I'm out of sorts, loves me enough to say, why don't you go hammer out 500 words real quick? She knows, like you say, Pops, the mental illness. And so she understands, hey, if I can give him time to do what he needs to do, then he's going to be in better spirits. And that's worth it for her. And so she's always been very, very encouraging to me. And Pops, as you've encouraged me my entire life. And that's been very valuable to me. So if you're struggling to get words on page, it might be because you don't have a strong support system. If you are more like Pops, where you've got that self-determination and that willpower, this may not be as necessary for you. And this is not to say that every single writer has a strong support system. It's nice to have if you can. Number 3, tune out the naysayers. And I would say that this is probably really important for any personality type, but you've got to tune out the naysayers. Have a team to build you up when the naysayers get you down is also a benefit to you. So if you've got that support group, but sometimes you don't, and you just have to learn how to tell them to shut up. The first most important thing that you can do is to learn to tune out the voices that tell you your writing is no good. Those voices that say you'll never make it, that writing a novel is too hard, writing is pointless, you'll never ever get published, no one cares about what you're writing, those types of voices. And I think what you'll find if you write long enough is that those voices are often just the ones in your head. Now, you might have some other people in your life, some particular, cancers, for lack of a better term, that want to nitpick and want to demean and want to demoralize. I'm hoping you don't have a lot of those people in your life, but if you do, you might have to learn to make some time and some space away from them, and you'll have to learn to tune out when they go on their rants about what a waste of time this is. If you start to listen to it and you start to believe them, it can be very, very disastrous, and you will likely never finish a project that you start, at least not a project. And so you have to be able to stand up for yourself and say, this is important. What I'm doing does matter. Writing a novel is hard, but I can do it. I can make it. I will make it. So you have to be able to tune those naysayers out. It's a very, very important thing to do being successful.
Yeah, I agree with that. And especially, Aaron, you're hitting on that we are our own worst enemy for something like that. But even if we get our own voices under control, there are people, external people we can't avoid, who are not as supportive. It could be a family member or people around the day job or something. I say politely remind them that as long as you're keeping up with your responsibilities, which is paying the bills, time with family, doing the day job, whatever it is that other person is in conjunction in your life for, as long as you're taking care of those responsibilities, it's not their decision what you do with your extra time. They don't get to have a say unless you let them have a say. And if they're not supportive, don't let them say it.
Yeah, there's always naysayer. I called them negative Nellies. There's always somebody who cannot feel alive unless they critique someone else. Their way of elevating themselves is to tear someone else down. Since they can't climb to the heights, then they'd rather dig a hole and put you in it. And you just have to understand where that's coming from. I find it better. Now, again, this is me, and this is the outlier, the oddball. But I find it better not to talk about writing with non-writers because, again, they don't have the disease. They don't understand that creative process. They don't know what it takes. For some new writers, they want to tell everybody that they're writing. And I can pretty much guarantee that no one else cares. When people ask me what I do for a living and I say I'm a writer, I get one of two responses. One is, oh, that's cool. The other is, so you can't get a job. Because they really have no idea. It doesn't fit their lifestyle and their experience. So I advise against that. I advise against telling other people that you're writing a book because you're just adding pressure to yourself. Just write the book. So when you finish, you can talk about the book or the story you wrote after that. But there's just some things you need to know. So let me be frank, and maybe next time I'll be Henry. If you tell everyone you're trying to write a book, then you might be more in love with praise than you are with the craft. Okay, and this comes from 20 years of my own mistakes and 20 years of talking to hundreds, probably thousands of writers in training. Most of those people who want to talk about their book that they're going to write or are writing are more in need of praise than they are the satisfaction of finishing the story. I know that sounds harsh, and I'm not speaking to any one person in particular. If the shoe fits, then own up to it. If it doesn't, fine, just say, Al's a cranky old man. I'm going to go walk on his lawn. But when it comes to the naysayers, I always think about Teddy Roosevelt, who has a great quote that he wrote, and it was in a Paris magazine. So this would be back around the turn of last century. And it's a quote about critics. And I think every writer needs to memorize the quote. And it begins, it's not the critic who counts. And then it goes on for a bit. But I think everyone needs to find that and memorize it because it is one of the most motivating things. Critics don't count. Critics are people who take your time to tell you how wrong you are rather than do anything themselves. Okay, so I don't pay much attention to critics at all. The only critics I pay attention to are usually editors because they know what they're doing. And I do make mistakes, and so I like a good editor who comes in and knows what's going on. And my favorite editors have been novelists. And that's a great thing about having novelists, other writers who are your support group rather than non-writers. It's because other writers, they won't pamper you. If they're honest, they'll just tell you, shut up and sit down and write. Okay? Because they know they've been there. And they know that, patting you on the head isn't going to help. They just need to, again, put boot to butt and make you right.
Mm-hmm.
Well said, Pops. Well said. And I would also agree with you. I don't think it really applies to our listeners, because if our listeners are tuning in, then I feel like they're pretty serious about doing this quote unquote writing thing.
Agreed.
But the one of the responses that I get when I tell people that I'm a writer, there's the, oh, that's cool. And then there's the, so you can't get a job. But the one I get all the time is, oh, I'm a writer too. Can you read what I'm writing? A lot. And then follow that with about a 25 to 30 minute short summary of the book that they're currently writing, and which is convoluted and they don't even have character names. It's just ridiculous. These are people who want to talk about writing, but don't actually like writing. It's important. If you want to be a successful writer, you cannot be one who wants to be a writer. You cannot be one who wants to be thought of as a writer. You just simply have to be a writer. If it's enough for you to be thought of as a writer, go make some business cards and be done with it. But if it's the work that counts, you don't have to talk about it. You just have to do it. And then people will know you by your work. Number 4, you want to develop a schedule. We've talked about this before. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but this is perhaps the most practical advice that we can give you. You have to make a time to write daily. For me, it's early in the morning. It's also in the afternoons after school. Or for some people, I know it's late at night after work, after they put their kids to bed. Once you've got that time, protect it. It's important. It's vital. Without it, you will never accomplish your goals. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but you hear people say all the time, I don't have time to X. And the response is always, you have 24 hours every single day. Are you going to tell me you can't find one of those to do something? And the answer is, yes, you can. You just might have to give something up, whether it's an hour of TV or an hour of video games or an hour with your friends or whatever it is. You might have to make sacrifices. And that's fine. Just be willing to, if you don't love it enough to sacrifice for it, then you just simply don't love it enough. That's what I would say.
I agree with that. And one of the suggestions you can do for something like that is you could go to bed half an hour later and get up half an hour earlier. I know that sounds like, okay, you're just chopping an hour off of your sleep. Yes, but if you look at it, if you get up half an hour earlier, you're going to have that half hour in the middle of the day, or right after the job, or before you go to work, or something like that. So you can find the time. I put in that it can sound oxymoronic to schedule time to be creative, but it is definitely worth it. When you approach it as if you're setting an appointment with yourself, I think there's a subconscious part of your brain that respects that and gets out of your own way to allow that creativity to happen. And it may not happen all the time, but once the habit develops, you'll find it easier. You say, okay, this is my time. I am meeting with myself. I am meeting with my characters. And it becomes something to look forward to and something that isn't a chore. For me, that makes it easier to write.
I've often taught that you have to know yourself. You have to figure out how your brain is wired. And so when you set a schedule, you have to find out what's going to work for you. It doesn't matter what Aaron does. It doesn't matter what Molly Joe does. It doesn't matter what I do. You find what works for you. If you don't know what that is, then try something. And if it's just not working, there's no error in that. You just found something that doesn't work, so move on and try something else. And so I've known many writers who get up very early in the morning, 4 a.m. to write. I've known some that don't start writing until everyone's in bed, and then they'll write for several hours. And these are people with full-time jobs that are doing this. They make the time. Their weekends, maybe they find something. Of course, you don't sacrifice the family. Writing's not that important. But you can find time. Well, really, you don't find time. You make time. You carve out time. And then once you know how much time you're going to have, you can pretty much predict how long it's going to take you to finish your work.
Absolutely. The number 5 habit of highly successful writers is developing a workspace. Where you write can often be as important as when you write. So you want to protect your space. Find somewhere to be alone. Decorate it with inspirational quotes or doodads that inspire you, whatever it might be. Make sure that you can close your door and keep the outside world out where it needs to be so that you can focus on what needs to be focused on. Again, this is Pops, like you say, you got to find what works for you. Some people want to have music in this space. Some people want to have, something else going on, bright lights, or some people like dim lights, whatever it is. Find what works for you, but find that space, make it comfortable, make it workable for you. I would suggest perhaps being able to unplug, turn off your Wi-Fi connection, whatever it is, so that you can focus on what you need to focus on with fewer distractions. But you want to make a space that works for you.
I swear, Aaron, I thought you were going to say turn off your wife, and I thought that's a really rude way to talk about Naomi.
My wife has a 2nd-degree brown belt in Shotokan karate. I would never threaten to turn her off.
I'm like, dude, if you zone her out, you're just in a whole other kind of trouble.
Oh, sure, you could do it. You could tell her once.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I heard you say. I'm going to turn off the Wi-Fi, and I'm like, oh, okay. For me, setting up the developing a workspace also includes setting up, and I think you kind of referenced this, Aaron, what I call a trigger environment. Because I write on my laptop and am often at different locations, even in my own house, I can be in my chair, at my desk, take it to my mom's house, or I'm at the spare desk at the day job during my lunch hour, and sometimes Starbucks. I set up my little workspace specifically to trigger my creative muse. I always have my coffee, a snack, and certain music playing. I have my Pandora music channel streaming, and among other things. But having the portable workspace for me is highly beneficial. But I always make sure I have the little visual triggers that are going to help me get into the writing mode.
I'm not very big with the quotes or the doodads. And I know some people find it very inspiring. I don't usually do that. I have some things little mantras I repeat in my mind, especially when I'm losing heart and wanting to give up. And that little mantra is very simple. It's shut up, Al. And then I move on. I'm very frank with myself.
Pops, I have that same mantra. Shut up, Al. Shut up, Al.
I've heard it a lot, so maybe that's where you got it.
Yeah.
So, as we're talking about the place to work, the thing that kept coming to my mind is the place where I work. It doesn't matter where I am. I've worked on airplanes. I used to go to Starbucks all the time. If I'm actually composing, that is, I'm putting words on the page, I'll have my laptop with me, but I often just shut out the rest of the world with headphones and sometimes nature sounds like rain, and do that. But I'm working all the time. I have an office in which I work, but I've done a lot of work just driving down the street, thinking things through, laying in bed, thinking. So it's not just a place. Now, I do know some writers who have set up caves, and by caves I mean it's the place they go when they're going to compose and you really can't get hold of them, and their computer doesn't attach to the internet, so there's not going to be any email, there's going to be no social media. It's going to be music. It's going to be because they have another music device playing, or maybe something recorded on their laptop, but it's very difficult to get to them. They don't want any other distractions. I've heard of that being done, especially those who are on deadline will often do that. They'll run away and hide and work. But really, again, this is one of those what works for you kind of thing. And you might have to try a few things.
The 6th habit of highly successful writers is to develop realistic, achievable goals. It's always fun to shoot for the moon. This year, I'm going to write 7 novels. However, unrealistic goals are generally unreachable, and the lack of significant progress toward these goals can inadvertently cause frustration and encourage you to give up altogether. Instead, start small. If you finish your novel in August instead of December, great, start another one. But if you start to fall behind, it's a lot easier to give up. Therefore, set reasonable goals that your goals that you can follow to ensure success, and celebrate. I'm a big believer in this. You want to celebrate when you accomplish your goals and hit major milestones. The end of the first draft, when you send it off to the publisher for the first time, the first round of edits, whatever the case may be. Those are significant milestones. 50% done, 75% done, whatever the case may be. Sometimes it takes a few positive rewards to keep us in the proper mindset. So you want to develop realistic, achievable goals.
I agree. And the positive rewards is fantastic. I would say that's also where your support group is valuable. You can ask them if they feel that you're on track or out of your mind. They're going to help keep you accountable to your goals. Is it realistic? Is it not realistic? But they will keep you accountable and help you celebrate those milestones. And that's super important because ultimately, yes, we write alone, but we're writing for other people. And I think to have them celebrate those milestones, at least for me, is really significant.
Yeah, again, I'm not real big on support groups, but that's me. And as I've already mentioned this, I'm tougher on myself than others would be on me. And I'm, again, a loner. So just being antisocial as I am, I don't rely much on groups or writing or critique groups or things like that. That's never worked for me. Remember, I keep talking about find out what works for you. It's also important to find out what doesn't work for you. But in addition to setting goals, free yourself to adjust your goals. And this is key. In 1969, we put men on the moon, but they made a lot of course corrections to get there. It's not a straight shot. And it's the same thing with writing. You may get your novel done, your short story done, whatever it may be, but you're probably going to have to make some adjustments along the way with that. And your goal setting is the same way. We have a tendency to set goals that are too difficult to reach. I can set a goal that this year, starting as tomorrow, I'm going to run 5 miles a day. Well, I can do it, but I'm going to need an ambulance to take me 4 out of those 5 miles. It's a goal that's beyond my capabilities at the moment. So, I would start with smaller and work up to that if the 5-mile goal was the thing. Same thing with writing a book. And this is where some people get disheartened. They think, I'm going to write a book. That's 350 pages. I'm going to write 90,000 or 100,000 words, or maybe even more if they're doing like fantasy and stuff. So I'll never get all that done. Well, you don't think about that. You think about the scene you're writing, and that's it. And if that's a little too tough for you, then you think about the sentence you're working on. Then you think about the next sentence. Then you think about the next sentence. In time, it all gets there with that. So if the goal seems too big, break it down into bite size. I just remembered, how does a person eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. Same thing with your goals. You reach your goals, one step at a time. So you have to give yourself some flexibility.
Some bite-sized bites, right? Is that what
to be redundant, bite-sized bites.
Yeah. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame. We can't get shamed again. Fooled. Shamed. Whatever. I can't even get the wrong quote correct. Moving on. Number 7, habits of highly successful writers. Get used to saying no. This is one I'm still working on. Once you've committed to writing and you call yourself a writer, you will be surprised at how many people come out of the woodwork to ask for your time. Sometimes it's super innocent. Hey, let's go see a movie. Sometimes it's work related. I'm going to need you to come in on Saturday, or you're the natural choice to head up this new project. I get that a lot sometimes. Sometimes it's writing related. Can you read my novel? Will you edit the story? Can you tell me what you think of my story idea? Will you endorse my book? Will you be on my podcast? Sometimes the best answer is simply, I'd love to, but I simply can't. Very sorry. Had to do that this week. Even I had somebody request, hey, can you read these stories that I've written? I don't have that kind of time. I wish I did have that kind of time. I'm very sorry. But any minute that I spend reading your work is 1 minute that I'm not spending on my writing. So I've learned to eventually, I've finally learned to prioritize my own writing and not to fill up my time with other quasi-writing things or other work-related things or other family things. Again, this is why I come back to doing a schedule. And adjusting your schedule is necessary. You don't have to be completely chained to it. Find what works for you. If you want to appear on a podcast in terms of, that might help out some marketing. for your book, that I would consider that writing time. That's fine if the podcast is about writing. But if it's not, then why are you spending that much time doing something like that? As a matter of fact, I've been playing with the idea of starting a new podcast for months, and I keep coming back to this idea of, it's tough enough to do the one that I'm doing. How am I going to add another one in there? That's time I could be spending with my writing, with my family, etc. So you want to make sure that you are that you get used to saying no. If you're like me, it's difficult, but it is necessary.
Yeah, that's a hard one. For me, I know being a successful writer, I don't want that to mean that I have to give up my social life. But saying no is not always a rejection. It's saying yes to believing in yourself. We want to give back to our supporters, but we can't realistically finish our own writing if we're always helping everyone else with theirs. So just say, you know what, not at this time. I really got to finish this. And your real supporters, they're going to understand that.
I'm thinking of Isaac Asimov. Newspaper reporter contacted him, wanted to do an interview, and asked if he could come over and interview Isaac Asimov in his office. And he said, Isaac Asimov said, but when would I write? He saw everything other than writing as interfering with his writing. He was so focused on that. And I'm not saying we all have to get to that point, but that is somebody who had the ability to say no and took it to new levels by saying that, no, I'm just not going to do that. And I get the same thing. I get, will you read my book for me? And I think, how long is your book? How many hours is it going to take me to read it? And you want me to do this for free and sacrifice my work time to be able to do that for you? Well, you get 5 or 6 of those. I could spend my life doing nothing but reading for endorsements. The other thing is requests to do blogs. I used to write for several blogs, and I finally said, I can either write for your blog or I can write the stuff I need to write. Because every blog that I wrote, if I did even just a 500-word blog post for someone else, I'm helping them. And I don't mind helping other people, but I'm helping them with what they want to do. And to do it, I have to sacrifice what it is I want to do. So I finally just said no more. And I just resigned all those things so I could refocus on what I need to do. Because, again, I was a minister, so I'm trained to say yes. And it's just a hard habit to break, but there just comes a time when I have to say, no, I've only got so much life left.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to make one quick point, and that's simply this, that it's not bad or rude to ask somebody to endorse your novel. Among professionals will endorse each other's novels and stuff like that. I don't think that's bad. I've never been offended when somebody has sent me their novel for review. But the point is, you do have to be able to say, you know what, I'm on deadline. I'm not going to be able to do it in the time that you need me to do it. And to be willing to do that, I think it is good to endorse a couple if you're in that position where you can. Great. But I try and do a little bit of quid pro quo. So I've got a couple of writers where we endorse each other's books, and it's just kind of I don't want to say accepted, but it's we are the go-to people for endorsements. And I've had other professional writers endorse one of my books, but not the second one because they were on deadline and they couldn't. And that's fine. I'm not offended by that. That means nothing to me.
Where some of this comes from, Aaron, especially of late, is it became very fashionable for agents to ask their clients to get endorsers before they submitted. And I was just getting tons of these. My agent needs someone to endorse this. Will you do it for me? Well, you're the 15th person to ask me this month to do that. And it's the bad thing is it puts the writer between a rock and a hard place. What do you do? It was just one of the ways publishing changed, so there's some I would do, but I can only do so many. So this goes back to planning a schedule. If those are things you're being asked to do, you have the skill set to do them. I've never been big on endorsing books. I've endorsed a ton of them, but the truth is I don't think my name sells anything. So I keep thinking I'm wasting the time, and I'm doing it because some agent wants it. or some publisher wants it. They want to know that I read it so that they can invest the time to read it themselves. And that's me doing their work for them. And so once again, I've just gotten to the point where I say no. There are a few that I do endorsements. I'll probably be doing one for a how to write book, but I know the author very well, and but I haven't gotten to it in over 2 weeks. Of course, there's been holidays and stuff, but among other things.
Holidays, my goodness. You probably had some deadbeat son coming up to visit you, huh? Just taking up all your time.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, it was horrible.
So here we go. Number 8, highly successful writers read. There's no way to get around this one. We shouldn't have to convince you that reading is a worthy spending of your time. The great news is there's no assigned reading. You get to choose what you want, choose what you love, and read it. We suggest picking something in the genre in which you're writing. This can double as research, and I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, I'm not a tax expert, but I'm pretty sure that buying books qualifies as a tax write-off if you are researching your own writing. Again, don't quote me on that because I don't need the IRS knocking on my door, but great news, you get to read. I am giving you permission to read. As a matter of fact, I'm telling you that you should be reading.
But what do you say to the people who say, I'm too busy writing to read?
You're too busy to be any
quote
good.
Stephen King. I quote Stephen King.
What does Stephen King
You
say?
must write. You have to write. Get used to it. Do it. Or not write. Read. You must read. If you're not reading, you shouldn't be writing. Read. Just do it. Read.
Okay. That's
He's
pretty emphatic.
clear about it. Yeah.
I guess so.
You know, and to point that up by way of another illustration is I watched a World Series game. He's a big baseball fan. Boston, I think, is his team. And he was in the stands watching a World Series game, and he had a book. And one of the television people went up to talk to him. And they asked him about why he brought a book. He says, well, it's a slow game. I read between innings. He wouldn't give up that time between the innings to read. So he read, and then he plugged the book. He said, this is a fabulous book. I can't remember what it was now, but he showed the cover and stuff like this. This guy's really good. You know, I've been sending him books ever since, but he got the court order kind of slowed me down. But anyway, the point is, if Stephen King feels he must read, then we must read.
Now, Pops, did you weren't the one who hit him with the van, were you? That wasn't you? Was it like a Misery kind of a situation?
I was aiming for the dog. No, it wasn't me.
Oh my gosh.
This is getting weird. Number 9, continue your education. I'm not necessarily advocating that you enroll in a college. However, you're more than welcome to. But Pops, you're pretty much self-taught by reading good books, reading craft books, listening to podcasts, and consuming the art of the craft, learning how to do that. So you don't necessarily have to enroll in a college to continue your education. You can educate yourself. Read your craft books. Maybe you do one a month or every other month, whatever it is. Alternate reading novels and craft books if you have to. I suggest listening to podcasts. There's a great one called Firsts in Fiction. It's got a really weird host, but other than that, it's pretty good. Going to writers' conferences. You can enroll in your local community college. You don't have to, apply to Harvard. Whatever it takes, make sure that you continue to learn the craft and to improve your craft. It's another habit of highly successful writers.
And I'm going to plug right here, Aaron. I know when you first started mentoring me writing a few years ago, you suggested Flannery O'Connor's Mystery and Manners book and Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird. And those two books, I mean, I hate to sound melodramatic, but they really changed my writing life. They changed my perspective, how I did it, how I approached it. They answered a lot of questions I had about, but is it okay to do things this way or that way? I definitely would recommend those two books. And Stephen King's On Writing, as long as we're talking about Stephen King. Those are the 3 books that I think any writer really needs to read.
Yeah, those On Writing, I think, is one of the best. Very honest, very frank, as you'd expect from Stephen King. I am self-educated on that. I did take one junior college class on writing, on creative writing, but it just wasn't very useful. I mean, the teacher was a poet, so.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Those of you listening may not realize that Aaron started off in poetry, and I know nothing about poetry, so it's been a running gag. It's a running gag.
He's a little intimidated, I think, as well.
That could be because I know very little about it. But what I would do is I would take books that touched me, that moved me, that I thought were well executed, and then I analyze them. They're my mentors. We live in an age where you can pick up books and they've been published and edited, and the really good ones, the well-crafted ones, they're your mentors. And so I would go through, say, like a Dean Koontz book, and I'd say, this is a very good book. Why is it good? And I'd break it down by chapter, and I would just study what's he doing that makes his writing good. And then if I came across a book that wasn't good, I would ask myself, where are they missing? What are they missing? Where are they messing up? So that I don't do that. And I do remember holding a book one time, reading it and thinking, man, that's a horrible thing to do. That just, oh man, I've just been doing that. And I went in, got on the computer, and I fixed the same problem that I'd been committing. I just couldn't see it in my own writing. So we go back to the reading portion again. But we live in an age where you can hop online and get almost any information you need.
Indeed. Mm-hmm. On the note of craft books, we did a cast probably 2 years ago. I'll try and get it for the show notes about the best books. I think it's called Books Every Writer Should Have. Pops, I think you might have been a guest on that one before you were one of the regular hosts.
Yeah, I think so, because I remember us talking about several of my favorite books.
Yeah,
on writing.
So if you're looking for more recommendations, that'll be good. I'll try and put that in the show notes at aarongansky.com. Last one, we're going to go real quick here because we're out of time. Communicate with your readers. So what I mean by this is cultivate a readership. By being available to your readers, it's you're going to find some loyal fans who will continue to read what you write and support you. And so by being available to them through Facebook, through a website, through Twitter, whatever it might be, just responding to a tweet here or there, responding to a Facebook question, whatever it might be, that's going to go a long way to help ensure sales. And I hate to, it's good to be in contact with your readers, number one. The byproduct, the advantage is that you might get some more sales out of it as well. So communicate with your readers and make sure that you're available to them, and you'll be surprised at how your readership grows.
You know, I created a private Facebook group for my family and friends where I update them with my writing progress. It includes letting them know when I'm blocked, when it's moving forward. It's a nice community. I like seeing the different interactions, not just initiated by me, but initiated through the other members. And it's neat to see them communicate with each other and connect with each other. But that's definitely something that I do, not only as a pre-marketing, but as that support group, as a way of giving back to those who are really interested in this process, since I have yet to finish and publish my book.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. Pops, any last minute suggestions, comments?
Nope. You got all my knowledge in less than an hour. So
barely. Actually, it was 4 minutes more than an hour. So it took a little bit longer, but we took last week off, so it's fine. Next week, or rather next show in 2 weeks, January 17th, we'll be looking at managing multiple projects. A suggestion by Andy Clapp, listener Andy Clapp. So saw him in the chat room. Hope he's still there. Thanks, Andy, for that suggestion. We loved it. We'll put together some notes on it. And Andy and anyone else in the chat room or anyone else listening to this on YouTube, if you have any questions about how to handle multiple projects or any questions pertaining to multiple projects, be sure to send those in via aarongansky.com or just on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. You can tweet at me, whatever the case may be, or Molly. We'll make sure that we get those rolled into the show notes so we could answer your questions, as well as if you have suggestions for other topics. We do have this year planned out. However, we're flexible. And so we might move things around a little bit, and we would love to handle whatever topics you feel are most important to your development as a writer. So thank you for joining us tonight. Don't forget to ask the author. You can do that as well. You can find us at altongansky.com, frankly-my-dear-mojo.com, and aarongansky.com. So until next week, good writing.